Hi, and welcome to episode 100 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram. And today is Sunday, March 29th, 2015. I think I'll start out today's show and just talking about this what I'm wearing. This is the Entangled Vines cardigan by Alana Dakos that I knit earlier this year. This was the one that I had knit a different sweater last year, and then I pulled the yarn out and reknit it into this one. I don't know if it's going to show up. It's got this kind of leaf pattern down the sleeve. I think when I finished it, I showed it on the podcast, but it was still wet from blocking, so I wasn't wearing it. Whoops. And so I thought I would just tell you that. The yarn I used for this was Sun Valley Fibers, MCN worsted, and this is the colorway called Soul Searching Blue. So that's what I'm wearing. As for what's been on my needles, I have been totally monogamous this week. So if you've watched the last couple of podcast episodes, you know what I've been working on. And I didn't get quite as far as I was hoping to, but it does show some progress. So this is my egg bohus sweater. This was the only thing I worked on kind of all week, and I didn't get as much done as I wanted. So this is the egg bohus, and as you can see, I've been working on a sleeve. I'm about halfway down one sleeve. I haven't started on the second one, but I did do one side of the button band. I don't know if it's gonna show. And what I did for this was I put this kind of lace on the bottom. So I kind of adapted that a little bit, and instead of doing where the used kind of like half of this kind of, it's not a cable, but it kind of slants one direction, and instead of doing the yarn overs, I did make ones. So it's got that same sort of, this side slants this way, and the other side will slant the other way. But it doesn't have the yarn overs in there, which would complicate things when I want to put buttonholes in. And then at the end, I'm going to do a 2-stitch I-cord all the way along the edge. So it'll be just a little bit thicker than what it shows. I did this kind of in a vertical strip, attaching it as I went. Using the sliding loop technique. I think I did this, I tend to do like a vertical band on all the bohus because the originals were kind of done in that way, and there's something about the look of it. On this one, when last week I talked about I had tried it one way and then I took it out. I had put on a sideways band, and then I was going to do this like little eyelet-y trim just along the edge, and I thought that would give it a vertical line or look to it, and I really didn't like how it looked, which is why I ended up taking it out and changing it all around. So I like how this looks. I have to do the other one and the neckband. The neckband, I will do the eyelets like it is on the bottom too, but I wanted to get to the store and look for buttons before I did the other side where the buttonholes are going, just to make sure that they're going to fit. I know probably what size I will get, but I just kind of put that off, and so that is as far as I go. I was hoping to have the second band kind of in the works so that I could maybe show you a little bit. I can't remember if I showed you when I did the blue bohus. But what it is the sliding loop. It's a way of doing intarsia, but kind of after the fact, like in a vertical strip. So kind of what you do is um, you're looking at the right side of the work, and you could use a crochet hook, or if you have a sharp needle you can just use the tip of the needle, but you bring a loop of yarn up to the front, and then you kind of knit. Well, I'll just show you on this. So you would kind of knit, it would be, on this side, you would knit across and then back, and then you would pull the extra yarn back to the back, and you'd go up 2 rows, pull out another loop, go back and forth. When you go back and forth, it's much better if you, it's a good way to learn, or if you haven't learned already, to kind of knit backwards so that you don't have to turn your work all the time. Knitting backwards is a great thing to learn, because for all kinds of, bobbles, whenever you have to knit back with just a few stitches, bobbles or entrelac or any of those kind of things. And it's really easy you can teach yourself really easily. All you have to do is, like, if you want to, make it look like stockinette stitch, so instead of turning it and purling, you're going to just look at the right side, is just turn your needles around and stick your needle in like you're going to purl, and then turn it back around, and you can see how the stitch, is how the needle is sitting in the stitch, and then you can turn it back around again and wrap the yarn around like you were going to purl it, and turn that around, and so you can see how that goes. And then you just, if you ever forget, you can always just, oh, that's how it goes. I stick my needle in going like this way. So, so this week I want to finish that sleeve and get the rest of the bands on, and I think then I'll be happy to just kind of slowly, I think it's going to be past kind of trying to get this done to wear it at all this spring, because it is merino angora, so it's a warm cardigan. I just want to get it finished so that I don't have to be working on it before during the summer. So because it's feeling like it's time to move on to other knitting. I don't want to let this just completely, stall out, but it was getting sort of feeling like a chore, which is never good. So I think it's time for me to knit a little bit of lace. So it's been a long time since I've knit anything lace. So I saw this sitting on the shelf, and I think maybe this is like the perfect time to pick it up. And this is a yarn that I received last year. I got this from my ZK roommate, and it's from Tailored Fibers. It's 100% superfine alpaca, and it's 620 yards, and it's a lace weight. You can see how thin it is, but it's blowing it out there in the light a little bit, but it's a kind of very pale blue to like silvery gray color, and the colorway is called April Showers, which I thought, it's going to be April, this week, the end of the week, so maybe it's time to cast on a little lace, and maybe this is the perfect yarn to do it in. So I don't know what, it'll be a shawl, but I'm not sure what, but I am thinking it's that time. So since I didn't have a lot of knitting to show you, and since this is episode 100, I thought it might be appropriate to show you a little sort of my knitting history. So I'm still in the process of putting sweaters away and stuff. So I found my very, very first knitting. It had been stored in the cedar closet for a long time. I discovered it about 5 years ago. I thought this had just disappeared, like in a move or something. Because I hadn't seen it in so long, but it was kind of thrown away in the back. And about 5 years ago, I cleaned everything out of there and discovered it, which was wonderful. To find your first knitting. So to kind of give you a little bit of history of, um, I don't really remember how I learned to knit and purl. Um, when I was 5 or 6, I remember, and my mom taught me how to embroider. It was a really, really hot summer, and we didn't have air conditioning, and so I think she was just trying to quell the whining I'm hot thing, just wanted me to like sit quiet or something. And I think she taught my sister at the same time. But we just kind of embroidered on the corner of a tea towel, that the kind where you transfer the outline with an iron. So, she just taught me the outline stitch, and I loved it. I loved doing it, and still even now, when it's really hot in summer, I get that sort of like, oh, I want to do something with a needle and thread. And so then, as years went by, I sort of went through all this sort of needle crafts. I did cross stitch, I did needlepoint, and I did hardinger and pulled thread, and those like felt kits with the little sequins and stuff. I did all that stuff, and I loved doing it. Um, but kind of, I I kind of went through all of them for a couple of reasons. I loved to learn new stuff and tackle a new thing, but also my mom was of the decided opinion that sort of kind of one needlepoint cushion on the sofa looked really nice, or one sort of cross stitch thing on framed was nice, but if you had a ton of them in your house, it just kind of would take on more of like a tacky look. So you would do like kind of one needlepoint cushion, and then maybe one to give away to somebody, and then I would kind of move on to the next thing. So we had a little craft store, kind of locally owned craft store downtown. Like the big ones are now. It carried lots of different supplies for lots of different crafts. It didn't have fabric. There was a different fabric store, but it had like all the floss, the different floss colors for cross stitch and stuff. And they had some yarn. It wasn't a big yarn store, and I don't really know that I remember like brands of yarn or anything, but they did have some yarn. And I know I was there once, and they had like just come in like a kind of pattern booklet and yarn. And somewhere I knew how to knit and purl. I don't really know. I've come up with ideas and like asked friends, like I thought, well, maybe I learned like in Campfire Girls or something, that would be something that like we would have learned kind of those basic things. And I asked, other people who were kind of in there with me, and they're like, I don't remember learning that. I one time I thought, well, maybe my oldest sister was a lot older than me, and she was in college when I was a little girl. So when we would go and visit, I would like stay in the dorm with her, and I thought, well, maybe I learned, from somebody that was like there, and they showed me. I don't know. My aunt knit, but I don't think she ever showed me. I remember asking her, and she said she didn't. My mom did crochet, and I remember her teaching me how to crochet. She took crochet class at like the technical school, and I remember she would take a class, and then she would show me how to crochet. And so I don't know if she also like took knitting and then just showed me like knitting and purling, and then or she didn't really like it, or that's like all they learned, or I don't know. But somewhere I knew to knit and purl. So when I saw this like sweater, that you could knit sweaters, and I thought, well, there would be no case of, well, you couldn't fill your house with that one item. You could have sort of limitless amount of sweaters. And I think probably at the time there were hand knit sweaters in stores. They were probably way out of my price range, but just the thought of it was like totally appealing. And so I got the yarn and I got the pattern. There was, I don't know, when you're young, maybe you're just thought, well, I know how to knit and purl. I didn't know how to increase or decrease or anything, cables or anything. I thought I could knit this. And so I set out to knit. So my very first thing that I ever knitted was a sweater. And so it, no, because the lady who owned the store, she was, I don't know if she asked me if I knew how to, she was like just selling the yarn or whatever. And it's, nobody told me that like fuzzy yarn is like hard to rip out but I remember I did a little bit at a time and I, finished it and I wore it. So this is my very first knitted thing ever. And it was this little cardigan. I remember wearing it. The yarn is, it was like a Bernat yarn. So, but it had alpaca in it, which back then I don't even know that I knew what alpaca was. But it's really soft, but it's like fuzzy. I don't know. It was an alpaca blend. I don't know if there's nylon or if there's mohair or if there's whatever, but it's like fuzzy. So I remembered when I had to like rip back, taped back stitch by stitch if I made a mistake. I remember it was like the hairs would stick to each other. And it's got like, I don't know if it's going to show up. It's got bobbles and like traveling stitches. And then the whole basis of it is like the background is like a moss stitch. None of it was charted. It was all written out line by line. And I do remember that I came out that when I was doing the chart, there was there was no chart, but when I was doing the pattern, there was a mistake in it. Like the stitch count didn't come out, and I like figured out that they must have missed and like there was needed to be an extra knit purls like somewhere. I remember figuring that out. Like good with it. It's got these this BTS, this Bavarian twisted stitch, was knit back and forth. So the body of the sweater was knit back and forth, but the sleeves were also knit back and forth and seamed. And if you've ever done the Bavarian twisted stitches, a lot of times you'll see them on socks because you have to, they travel. So it's like a 1 by 1, but the knit stitch is twisted and like it travels kind of, back and forth. So you usually do it in the round so that you're always looking at the right side of the work. So this was done back and forth. So you'd have to like purl through the back loop and like move it, like twist it. I don't know if it's going to show, but this is the cast on for the wrist. Look how teeny. It has no stretch in it at all. And it is teeny. Like I can like get my hand in there, but that is tight around my wrist. Now, granted, I was a lot tinier back then, but I don't know if my wrists were all that much tinier, but it is cast on really tight. The cast off has no give whatsoever. It is like super duper tight. So, and you had to sew everything together. There was nothing done like mattress stitch. It was just kind of back stitched. I remember when I learned a lot doing it because that I still, because it's got this kind of waist shaping. It's got, it's really hard to see. It's got ribbing at the waist And then I remember reading the pattern, and it's saying, when you were going to do these, the shaping for the armhole, um, to kind of do it so many inches or like kind of desired length. And I totally didn't know what that meant, and kind of just did it the number that it said. And then when I got it finished, I realized, oh, it's the ribbing was kind of above my waist because I'm a little long-waisted, so that I always have to lengthen my sweaters, if I'm doing waist shaping like now. um, I probably kind of did this decreasing. It's not put together very well. I remember thinking the knitting part was easy. It's like the putting together that was hard, and I probably decreased right on the edge, so it was like hard to get it put together. Like one of these sides, there's like a funny line where there's like a half a stitch sort of that I veered out of line, and it's got these like puffy sleeves, and I didn't know kind of what to do about that. And my mom did help because she was a seamstress. She sewed all her own clothes, clothes for us when we were little, but she was like teeny tiny, and they didn't have petite like sized clothes back then, so she could sew suits and everything for herself, and she could tailor anything. So she kind of showed me like how to do to make like the puffy sleeve at the top and stuff. So, but I wore this a lot. I remember I had a kind of burgundy wine and gray kind of plaid skirt that had fringes fringy at the bottom, and then I wore like a maroon kind of wine little blouse, and I had my first pair of bandolinos that went with this outfit. They were so pretty. They were wine colored, like Duracell slingback pumps with a little peekaboo toe and a wedge heel, and they were so pretty. It was like, and back bandolinos were like really nice. So anyway, I dug this out to show it to you. So because I really wanted like a sweater. I think if this like shop owner had said, oh, before you knit that sweater, you should knit a scarf, or even if she'd said you should knit a hat, I don't know if I would still be a knitter. I wanted to knit a sweater. So when people kind of ask, like, what should a new knitter like knit first, I always say, why do you want to learn to knit? Because if they really want to knit socks, why, don't like start them on something like because you think that it's easier. Because if what they really want to knit is socks, they will have incentive to actually finish socks. So anyway, and I mean, unless it's like somebody that has never like made anything. I mean, I had like a history of like I was like making things and finishing things all the way along the line. So, I know that like some people when they start out knitting and they knit kind of just like garter stitch, something, they're like so excited that they actually made something. So, but this is where I started. So this was my first sweater, and there's good things about it, and there's like lots of things. It's fun to look back and think, what was I thinking? But I really had incentive to knit. I remember the second sweater I knit was a big Icelandic yoke sweater, and I had never used, the sleeves were done the whole thing was done in the round, and this, sleeves, you had to use double points, and I didn't know what to do with double points. And I remember that lady who owned that store, there was the package of double points, and she said, "Do you know how to use these?" And I said, "No." And she took them out of the package, and she, laid them on the counter, like put three like a triangle because it was a package of four. She laid the three on the counter as in a triangle, and she held up the fourth one, and she said, "And you put them like this, and then you knit with this one." She put them all back up and put them in the package and handed it to me. So yeah, I think I like to figure things out by myself. There was no YouTube. I didn't have any knitting books at that point, or anything. I just kind of had the little, like the first one was just a little booklet with kind of like 4 patterns in it. And then I bought like the Icelandic booklet that had the pattern I wanted to do. So anyway, that is kind of my start to knitting. So to celebrate this being episode 100, I have some things to show you that I'm going to put up a thread in the Ravelry group, which is Friends of Heartland Knits, to do kind of a giveaway thread. And this will run through April, I think, just to give everybody who wants to a chance. And these were all things that were donated to the podcast at one time or other over these last 100 episodes, that like I gave some of them away, and then I kind of kept some back just in case I was going to do a knit along and stuff. And I don't know, I just decided to kind of get rid of all of them that I had accumulated, because I don't know, I have just kind of a weird feeling of, I love giving like stuff away to people, but yet at the same time it makes me feel like I'm trying to bribe you into watching. And I don't know if other people like ever feel that way, but for me that's kind of how it feels. And I've kind of gotten away from doing knit-alongs. I'm not going to say that I'm never going to do one. Excuse me. Never going to do one again. I just don't really have plans to do one at the moment. And so anyway, I thought I'll just like show you what they are, and then I'm going to put a thread up in the Ravelry group. You have to be a member in order to enter. And so oh, and before I forget, because I have a little thing on the top of my computer and I don't want to forget, I wanted to send a great big thank you to Patricia, who sent me out of the blue. She sent me a donation for the podcast. It was just, I could hardly believe it. So thank you so much, Patricia. That money is going to go for shipping costs, for shipping these things, and thank you. So I'm going to just kind of go through and show you what these things are. And this is a skein from Solar Flare Fibers. I don't know if it's there. And this is this really pretty blue. Fiona gave this to me to give away for the podcast when she was over here at ZK, and it's this really, really pretty blue lace weight. It's a merino silk, 80% merino, 20% silk, 875 yards, and the color is called The Eyes Have It. I don't know if she's dying anymore. She hasn't been podcasting lately, so I don't know, but I almost wrote to her and said, let me pay you for this, because I love the colors. It's so pretty. But I'm gonna give it away. And then there's another skein that at one point, like somebody sent me a big box of things that to use for prizes, and this was in that box. I've never used this yarn myself, but it is Tempted yarn. It's her Heavenly Girl. It's 950 yards, superwash merino. So this is a lace weight also, and this is called Nymph, but it's this really pretty teal color. So this is like the only tempted yarns I've ever actually seen. Matches my nails. So there is that. And then there is a skein from Jeanette from Sun Valley Fibers. And this is one of her MCN. It is called Cranberries. It's merino cashmere silk. It is 400 yards, and it's not that bright. It's like more like that color. So it's like a cranberry color, but it's really soft and squishy. So there is that. And then I have this one. It's like a little wrinkly. I put a skein of yarn in there because it's been laying flat for a while. But this is a little piddaloop bag. One of her little, what did she call these? Piddaloops? I don't know. But it's a little box bag. It's wrinkly. I will try to steam it before. But it's really pretty, like flowered fabric. And then it's kind of orange spots inside. So there is that. And like I said, I will put a thread up in the Ravelry group. And I don't know what the prompt will be, but there'll be something. So that will run through April, and I will pull the winner or winners the first weekend in May. If you want to do something to help celebrate this 100 episodes, I would ask go on over to iTunes and do a star rating or a review or something, just because it feels like monumental to have 100 episodes. But if you want to do that, you can. So the podcast can be found on iTunes. It can also be found on YouTube. The channel is Heartland Knits, 2 words. And you can also watch it on the blog, which is heartlandknits.blogspot.com. So thank you all so much for watching. And until I see you again next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.